All right, hello everybody. Let me just do the dance, the Zoom dance. This should be okay. And all right, play. So while I do this first little spiel, uh, jump onto tuple.app. They're not sponsoring this, but they have sponsored a license for me to do open source work and pair with people that know more about the stuff that I like to do and that they help me out. So I'm gonna use the license today to see if we can do a little interesting dynamic here of people coding in my laptop. Please don't do anything funky. I beg you. So just as I do this first little bit, download the app. I'll post a link at the end so that you can join the call. Cool. So I want. Where's my mouse? Sorry. Whoa. I can see my mouse. That is a little bit annoying. Just one sec. I want to make sure that I can get this right. I minimize this. It's annoying. Okay, for some reason I can see my mouse. This is not good, but anyway. Cool. So I didn't know how to call this talk, but let's call it like surface objects and friends, or this exercise, not a talk. Adam's gonna be with me here today as well to facilitate the discussion and sort of keep things going. I work at BuildKite. In BuildKite, we do a lot of very, very cool stuff. We call ourselves a scale-out delivery platform. We do pipelines for your CI and CD. We build package management solutions, package registry solutions, and we also have a magnificent test analytics product that we call Test Engine. Very cool. I work on package registries. So I wanted to put a screenshot here because I'm very proud of the work we're doing. So if you have needs for that, just talk to me. It's a very cool thing that we're building. Usually when I give one of these talks, I talk a little bit about my country of origin, which is Colombia. I'm going to be very short today because I realize that by watching the recording, sometimes I spend too much time on this. So this is going to be a quick one. I want to recommend this book. You can go get at Dimox or any online store. It's called Colombiana. It's a book about Colombian food. Colombia has very distinct regions, as you might have learned in another one of my talks. So this book is sort of like a journey through multiple regions of Colombia. And the dish you actually see in the cover is something that I made last weekend. The beef is called posta cartagenera. This is a dish from the Caribbean coast. So posta cartagenera is a braised blackened beef with a sweet thing called panela. It's a kind of sugar that we use in Colombia. Very cool. Arroz con coco blanco, which is coconut rice, white. So rice and white, like Adam. It's your rice, man. um, Also plátanos en tentación, which I kind of translated to sweet plantains in temptation. I don't know how to translate that, but it's like coconut milk, sweet, cinnamony stuff, and pepinos machacados, which is just smashed cucumbers with a little bit of garlic. So this is a recipe you can try from this book. It's really good. I'm not sponsored by any of this, but you can go and try. It's very good. Which one? Ah, really good. Yeah, the hot dog one. Good. Yeah, I'll talk about hot dogs in the next one. Cool. All right. So service objects and friends. So I had a little bit of a hard time sort of naming this talk because we call this thing like the objects we use to encapsulate our business logic like very many different ways. So I thought like maybe interactors and friends. That didn't like roll the tongue. Form objects and friends. That's another one of those. Query objects. Have you used query objects? I see some nodding. Yes. Body objects too, right? Operation objects. Anyone? Called operation. It's a lot. Like it's a lot of things, and especially if you're sort of in your journey of learning how to make web applications and Rails applications, it is quite daunting to see all of these articles online and people recommending service objects or interactors or Trailblazer or a bunch of other things like, oh, like what is like, do I need to know all of these? When do I use them? Do I create like folders for each? So yeah, what's the answer? As it's been the common thread in my latest talks, I don't know. So the idea of this talk, and just join this link as I finish this bit, is just for all of us to collectively share our experiences about how we do it. I can kick us off with some ideas and some stuff that I do in my own personal projects and some of the stuff that we do at work. I want to show you some real-ish code today. Very redacted and not showing anything company related, but some examples of real code that I extracted from BuildKite that I can show you today. So yeah, I'll leave this for a couple more seconds so that everyone can join, and we'll get started. I'm hoping this works. I've never tried this. I don't even know how many people you can have on a tuple call. Let's hope that a lot. And okay, cool. I think I can just close this. I didn't even save this thing. Oh, sorry. I'll leave it for 1 more minute. I know I should have done that, but then you have to take your laptop and sort of like do that dance. Oh, easy. Where is it? Cool.
Yeah, I got kicked off because you didn't start.
Sorry. There you go.
You want me to do the audio? Or?
You,
Not.
you should be in, right? All right. Had to call 2 people. Ooh. All right. Can anyone attempt to? Oh, there you go. Surprise. There you go. Yeah. All right. Anyone else want in? No, that's it. Okay.
That's built in with that's the Mac. Oh yeah, maybe someone from remote.
Remote friends. Does anyone want to join? Oh, where's the call? Because I'm sharing, so I can see you. But yeah, please join if you want. Cool. All right. 3, 2, 1. Let's do it. So let's get started. If you yeah, let's get started. Cool. So this is a blank Rails app, and I wanted to start by sort of showing you some of the stuff that you would see online about different techniques or tools to encapsulate your business logic. One of the first ones that not many people think about is actually active job. There is a lot of people who actually use active job as their framework to encapsulate business logic, because it is actually an object that performs a single thing. It can perform it now or perform it later, but it's still a place to encapsulate a single thing. So we usually think about jobs as like only for the purpose of jobs, but there are some people out there who are using it just to encapsulate that. So if you don't want to install anything, if you don't want to learn anything else, you could probably just get by, but by just using active job in Ruby on Rails. Ooh, thank you. Thanks for the heads up, because I miss. So okay, so that is like option number 1 that I want to like put on the table. Does anyone want to try the tuple thing and get us started with some other options that they use? Mike, do you want to try them?
Oh, just put it in the controller.
Yeah, no, like do whatever. Like what do you do in your?
PHP version left. Just put it in.
Okay, no, what do you do? Like, could you show us like any like a quick dirty example of what it is you do to encapsulate your business logic in your apps?
I actually don't do much. I just yell at other people whatever they've done. Yeah, I tend to mostly just deal with whatever anyone else has set up and kind of go, oh, well, this is kind of a bit too much of this, a bit too much of that. I mean, personally, I would say it should go in service object, right?
In a service object.
If you're going to split it out,
yeah.
The controller should probably call a service object. The service object should do all the things, and the model should literally just act as a repository to write the data.
Nice.
But
that
I
is.
do feel that service, the name feels like, well, it tends to be, is it more used for a third-party service? So you wrap like an API around that. And then obviously recently I've been in a bunch of places using Packwork. So then do you just put it in a pack, and once you put it in a pack, you then have like a pack with a service?
Yeah, that starts growing quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things that I sort of encountered when I worked in different companies is that whenever you like you confront yourself with okay, where do I put this thing? Like one of the reflexes that I've seen in teams is that they go and say, okay, new directory services or service objects, right? So let's do the two because maybe engineers like didn't like quite agree. So some do service objects, some do services, right? So now you have your models, you have service objects, and you have services. And then you just put objects in there. And then as Mike said, you just put them in the controller. And that's sort of where you encapsulate your logic. Adam, what do you do in your apps?
So I use active interaction to create interactors.
Let's see. Active interactors.
Interaction.
Interaction, okay.
Yeah. This is something that actually the Anton that's not here has actually done a bit of a discussion about previously. What I really liked about active interaction is that it essentially takes it uses Rails conventions. So it feels reasonably Railsy and it's not too much of a learning curve. The only difference, however, or one thing that's interesting is that it does, as you can see here, it does type your inputs, which I quite like. I'm not a fan of like typing everything, but I usually want to know what's going in and what's coming out. That's also the same way I think about it from a testing standpoint. When I think a lot about interactors or service objects, whatever. It's just the fact that I can just test what goes in and then I test what comes out, and I don't really need to think too much about the implementation details. One thing I found really interesting is that Anton created a whole set of extensions for this, which are really helpful and challenged my assumptions a lot. One of the ones he did was introduce the ability to call them with active job. And that took me a while because like in my mind, I had this separation, like active job's this thing that's supposed to run my background tasks on the side. They're not supposed to be part of the service object, but when you're just like, sorry,
Functional fixedness.
yeah, and then I just kind of tried. I was like, actually, it's kind of nice. It actually works pretty well. And then, you can then all of a sudden every service object could be a background job or it could be a foreground job, but you don't need to.
Right. So in a Rails app, could you, like come here and like do the live version of tuple because no one's jumping in. So where would you put them? Like where would you do this?
This is a fun discussion because I'm playing with this right at the moment. I'm running a bit of an experiment. By default, normally I would, like you've done here with server, I'd create a services, an interactions directory.
Let's hide it because I want to. I want this app to get messy.
Yeah, no worries.
Even if it's with folders.
Oops, sorry. I am failing miserably. What are we working with? Is this
that is RubyMine. You want to get a license? We have a free license for you.
So previously I've had this interactors directory and that's where I'd put them. What I'm trying at the moment is I found that most of the time my interactors directly relate to a single model. And then it kind of got annoying jumping back and forth between directories. So now I've started attempting, this is a new experiment that I can't tell you if it's going to succeed, but I've started co-locating. So let's just say, for instance, that I had a user do I want to just cancel? So let's just say I had, obviously I'm not going to fill all this out. There's a user model. It's got lots of stuff. But then if there are actions that are directly related to things for the user, then I would have a user directory. And inside there, I might have, I don't know what something we might do on a user. Let's just say create. Let's just say like create for the simplicity. And then
but I think like, would you call it create, or would you call it creator or create service? Like, what name would you use? Because I think the naming is part of what is complicated about these things, because it could take you one way or another.
And I'm about to make it even more confusing.
Okay, let's do it.
So I love this discussion.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it more complex, and then let's think on this.
Okay.
So by default, obviously you would normally assume the interactor is gonna create the object. So we say first, because we're inside the user directory, I've got a class user which extends application record, and then I've got a class create, which is going to extend my application interactor, which won't exist, but let's pretend it does. And then it has an execute. I love that it needed an execute method. Wow.
AI.
Well done. And the execute method is where I'm going to do my work. So when you work with active interaction, you call the interactor either with the run or the run bang method. Run will return an object that has a success or fail states, and if you call it with a bang, if there's an error, it will just raise an exception. But so regardless, it's going to hit this execute method. And as we saw in the docs before, I don't know, whatever, let's say there's a string for a name. Let's just have a user just have a name. And so you can do your work in here. But where this gets interesting is that active interaction also allows you to use these as form objects. And this is where the naming gets tough. Because so I could basically say to it, and I'm going to get the syntax on this a bit wrong, but I think it's model equals that user or something. I can't remember exactly. It's going to be somewhere in this general vicinity. And then now what I could do is in the view, I literally pass. So I instantiate this with new.
Like
and
a
I-
new create user colon new,
So let's
like create new. You can just do it in that same file if you want. Or okay.
Oh, yeah,
Whatever,
okay.
yeah.
No, I like it. Let's put it on the same file. So let's just pretend we're in a view here. And in the view, it would be form with its model, right?
Yeah.
Model, and then I'm literally passing in. So obviously I wouldn't instantiate this in the view, but let's pretend that this is how this is done. Dot
All
new,
right.
and then that is going to give me a new instance of the user. So and
Of the interactor.
well, it's a
the
new, yeah, it's a
Kind of
new
delegating to the user.
interactor representing a user,
Yeah.
but it's going to have understand the parameters that exist on a user,
Mhm.
and it will, because it's using like active model and everything under the hood, it will just magically tell Rails that, well, sorry, it'll tell the form builder within Rails what fields I have available to me, so that when you do your standard like f dot I don't know, input, yeah, like that, it knows that a user has a name and
Nice.
that will work.
Very cool.
The challenge I have is I still can't work out how to name these things, because this is now a form object and the
Part of the
thing that
view,
does the
yeah.
creation.
Yeah.
And I don't like, at the moment, I'm not using words like create, because I think it creates a bit of confusion, because create is kind of, you expect create to be the thing that's doing the, like, creating it in the database. And I don't want to overload that term.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting.
I'm a huge form object fan.
Yeah.
And you seem to like the form object usage of interactors. What's stopping you from going straight form objects as thing you sort of instantiate for the purpose of building up a view on a form, and then just sort of delegating out the CRUD actions to service objects or interactions?
There is nothing that stops me from doing that. There's just something nice about having all of that logic contained in one file. And no matter what I want to do, it's always going to be in that one place. So as an example, I recently was working with one where there's it has nested values, and I can use the interactor to create the empty record, and then the same interactor knows that empty record was created and how to adapt to it when it saves. And you can see co-located, like, okay, I can see why I need to get rid of that empty record. It's because I created it just there.
But if
they're
similar
instead of
issue
file,
recently
it
was
can
kind of a
confuse
huge pain in a form object. It took me a little while to juggle those things. So
Yeah.
it sounds like maybe that would be quite nice.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that is application interactor. So active interactor and active
interaction.
interaction. Okay, cool. Active
Yes,
interaction.
But they tend to refer to interactors.
Interactors,
within
yeah.
Active interaction.
Okay, cool. Okay, so that is one option. Thanks, Adam, for bringing this up. Does anyone else have something they want to sort of share and type it here?
You're gonna share your screen on Tuple so we can like.
Oh, on Tuple. Yeah.
What was the point?
Yeah, that was the point, and I
Whilst you're doing that, so I just had a.
I messed it up. Sorry. So you go.
Okay.
I was wondering, like, where is everyone when I need it? I'm sorry, that was my fault. Okay, cool. Just don't do anything to my computer, please. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Different. Yeah.
There we go.
There you go. Okay, cool.
We've done everything all right.
All right, we took them all. Cool.
Folders under app services
Yeah.
at the moment, but obviously as I said, we're moving towards packs. We've got 23 packs.
Mm-hmm.
That's folders, so then within those, there's.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Ridiculously.
Okay. Hey, who's this person who's running my computer right now?
As a alternative approach, I mean, one thing that we're starting to talk about at this scale, we're not talking about like code that runs and pops exceptions, things in the normal sort of flow of things. We're starting to talk about modular chunks of functionality, business logic.
Yeah.
And so it might make sense to start to talk about different mechanisms for these things to interact with each other.
Yeah.
And that's where people start to talk about things like monads. You know, the idea of
Exactly.
you know, we don't have code that pops exception. We have, you know, an unsuccessful business operation. So if you are in Ruby,
100%.
when you're talking about monads, we're talking about dry monads.
Exactly. Yeah. So we
dry operation.
exactly. So that is one of the. There you go. Okay, friends who are on Tuple, please only take control when you want to show us something, because if not, I'm gonna get very distracted and I'm not gonna be able to sort of guide the discussion. So if you wanna jump in, like please let me know, and by all means we'll let you jump in, but it can get a little bit distracting. So yeah, it's like I opened the doors, like I know. Okay, cool. Okay, if this doesn't, I made this happen. Okay, so cool. Dry operation. Yes, I haven't used this in a few years now, but I did use it at a previous job, and we were all into dry operation and the monads and all of that stuff. Like, do you sort of have enough of it like on your on muscle memory to give us an example?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, easy.
Dry and monads.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those technologies that developers, you know, the developers that I've met in the community are generally about 3/4 smart enough to make this stuff work. And so there's, you know, statistically, there's a few standing out who can sort of get it to work.
Mhm.
The rest of us just have to suffer through trying to get this stuff. But it's so I've retreated and said, like, I'm not smart enough for this stuff. So I build service objects that aren't even classes, are just modules and just do exceptions.
Yeah, like I had a very similar experience with all the dry suite. Yeah, again, maybe I wasn't like up to par with the people who were like spearheading this, but yeah, definitely it was incredibly hard for me to follow the patterns that this sort of proposed, the stateless nature of them, because in theory, in the dry sort of world, you don't store any kind of state in your object. And that was incredibly hard to do as a Rails developer, where you're used to, and a Ruby developer in general, where you're used to sort of holding state, having your instance variables sort of track things as you do operations. So that was a very hard mindset for me to get to. Like, it was, yeah, it's
so my time in Elixir feels like it's almost entirely wasted, except for the very procedural, like the functional approach.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, because like this example is actually kind of interesting, because it sort of shows like a healthy way to do it, but I saw it transform into a very terrible mess.
I did use dry library many years ago.
Yeah.
Dry transaction.
The transaction, yeah. Maybe I haven't been following too closely, but yeah, there was something in that realm. So
We found that point, the dry transaction, really understood the success path. Because they were talking about railway programming back then, and it really
yeah,
the success path. There was no railway where you built a different path.
yeah.
You failed the success path.
So let's say that this app that we're building has been through all of that and also had like operations. And
So I suppose add to what your comment was, I mean, this
And
brings up this
transactions.
whole idea of resolved object versus exception. I still haven't ever seen anyone convince me of the result object. Like every time I look at things, every time I see a talk at a conference or see anything else, I'm always swayed towards fail fast, fail early. You got a problem, just tell the upstream system, the user, whatever, I
Mhm.
can't handle this,
Yeah.
rather than, oh, okay, well, you haven't got a valid password, but let me continue a little bit more. And a little
Mhm.
bit.
Can I provide an example?
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna make a quick pause.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna stop the tuple thing. I don't think it worked too well. If anyone in the room wants to come and do something live, let's do it. But I'm feeling a little bit uneasy with so much movement. It was an experiment.
Did you realize you got AWS keys and you can uncomputer it?
Yeah, I was like, yeah. No, but yeah, I just
All the build code Git repo has been downloaded.
as we speak. No, cool. So yeah, give us an example. Yeah.
Of why I like that pattern actually, because this is something I use with, and it actually goes to, sorry, your question earlier. I thought about this after I answered you. If I add let's say we have the users controller, and then in here, I'm not even going to bother setting that. Let's just say we've got a create method, and it's going to do some stuff, but let's just say then from here we've got some things and we're calling that interactor we had before, which was user create dot run. So when I call run, it's going to give me back the result object, and then we pass it whatever, some params. You can actually pass the params directly in like that. Because again, Anton created a lovely thing that does strung params, so you can do that inside the interactor. But then we're going to get the result object from that, and then from here I could say if result of errors.any, then I'm going to re-render the page. Usually I use a component. Let's just say I'm going to render something, right? And I'm going to pass. I actually don't remember, sorry, how to do action view, but let's pretend I had to use a component. So I call the user component, and I can pass in that that result object, something like that, or else we're going to maybe redirect somewhere. So in that case, like it's allowing me to just do that nice pattern, but I don't need to wait for the whole interaction to run inside that. Keyboard shortcuts are different on here. Inside that interactor, I created a little, oh no, not that one, sorry. I created a little helper, so I could just call at any point in the process, I can just call halt. And if I want, and I can pass it a message if I want that gets passed back. And so that means I don't have to execute the whole thing. It will just stop. I can stop at any point, but I don't have to raise an exception. And that's just using throw catch to do that.
That's very cool.
However, if you don't mind, I would love to see an example of how you do service objects using only module, like the interface.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just all of the functions, like you have an entry function, just like any normal social tests plus does, and then any information that's needed by, like you break the logic down into methods that are also and then yeah, you just pass that necessary information down to subordinate one.
It's only that.
Yeah, very much like this. One of the patterns that I found very useful is I tend to put at the top level of the module an exception class that inherits, say, standard error, and then I build subordinate exceptions off that, and then so the idea being that anyone who uses my service can say, look, if something goes wrong in there, I can just listen for the base error, and that's you telling me. You understood that something went wrong, is a message about maybe what happened. But ultimately, the point is the service didn't work. Then you can tease it apart into like the subordinate exception, saying like there was a JSON error if you're interested that there was a JSON error, or if you're interested in some other thing that happened. And I've used this pattern a lot, particularly for third-party APIs, because you almost never care how it went wrong. You just need to know that it went wrong. But there's often a whole stack of different types of things that can go wrong. You know, they give you the wrong HTTP status response. They give you back a valid response. like they give you back a 200, but they give you junk, like they don't give you JSON. Then you try to parse it, and then you succeed at parsing it, but inside of it says errors. And you're like, oh, okay, so, and you just have this like hierarchy of stuff. And so you can build up like lots of different useful exceptions to feed that back to anyone who's interested. But ultimately, mostly the response is just, I tried, I failed, sorry. Bye.
Yeah.
I think so.
Actually, I think in Buildkite we have a similar pattern where we establish errors for classes and then sort of subclass from that. So I think we do something a little bit similar at work. So and I want to sort of tick a couple of boxes of stuff that I wanted to show you, and then if we come up with other things that you do, we can check them in here. So in Buildkite, we do something kind of similar to what you were mentioning, at least in terms of the structure, and similar to what Michael was saying about using the model just as a kind of a repository. I don't want to say the word repository because that takes you on a weird path, but just as the thing that accesses your database and sort of stores stuff and uses all of the Rails method for that. But that's why I ask you about the name, because we use something like this. We call creator. So a class user as a creator, it doesn't inherit from anything. It's just like plain object, no execute, no initialize, whatever. It initializes as any class would, and then we do create. So a creator creates, and that's the pattern that we use along like in our code base. We at Buildkite, I've been very impressed that we sort of don't bring a lot of gems for stuff for these kinds of things. We just roll with like poros, like just pure old Ruby objects, and like come up with whatever we need as we do stuff. And similar to what you were doing, or where you're experimenting with, I don't see many of these folders because it starts to get messy of having all of these folders. So we just put everything in models. Everything is model. The creators is part of the model, is part of the definition of what a user is. So we do something sort of along these lines. I've also done stuff like creating data classes. So part of the intro, I mentioned value objects. Ruby has now a very cool thing called the data object, where you can say, let's say, for some stuff, we have a result, and you define a data class, and then you give it what the parameters is that it accepts. So I can't think of anything right now, but let's say API call and database call. This is a very bad example, but whatever. And then as part of the create action, you would say, okay, result dot new API call, I don't know, true, and database call true. So then you can, like in the end, like this receives a block, so you can add methods to data class and say dev success, and say, yeah, if API call and database call. So as we need these kinds of objects, we roll them into the same class. But again, we don't have a values folder. They are accessory objects within what we need to do. I don't know if Buildkite does this. I know I've done it in a few places. I don't know if these are crimes, but this is some of what I've sort of experimented with. I don't even need to create a new like file for this thing. It just lives inside this because it is scoped to this particular creator. So it's already nested, already sort of nice and neat. So this is some of the stuff that I've been experimenting with.
Business logic, so like validations that don't fit, they shouldn't be on the user because it's kind of specific to this action. You just do standard like Ruby.
Active model, like we use active model. Like if we need to do any user facing stuff that needs validations, we just create an active model, like a class that includes active model. So if you haven't used that, so let's say let's call this user, I like this word, origination, like as an object that says how do you create a user, the origination of a user. So class user origination, and you include active model, and this is what I would use in the view. But this probably doesn't hold any of the logic to actually create the user and any associated objects. That would be part of the creator, or the, let's say in this case, weird naming, but the originator. So those OR classes are the ones that hold the actual details of storing in the database, doing any API calls, whatever. The form objects, they just do their job of receiving customer or user input, validating, and delegating the actual process to some other object that knows that. That's sort of what we've done a little bit in Build, or what I've done in Build. It's a big org, so people do things differently. In a similar vein, I wanted to show you something that I found super interesting, and I'm going to show you first the sort of hacky version that I'm using, and then I'll show you where this is inspired from. So I just created this thing. This is a real example from some code, a real-ish, because I named it thing, but the use case was self-deleting a thing. So in a very similar vein, I have a thing class that has a soft delete method, and soft deleting means just updating some fields and then tagging that object for deletion, because this is an object that lives somewhere else, needs to be tagged so that some other system deletes it. So I've done this, and the actual class also responds to tag for deletion, because the object itself, I want to call somewhere else in the system. I want to be able to call, let's say, thing.find one, and then thing.tag for deletion. Like being able to call the methods on the object, I'm sort of like falling in love with that again. Like the difference between doing this and doing this, it's I don't know. This doesn't feel as nice as just saying, okay, thing tag for deletion. I know someone else takes care of that. I don't need to know what the object is. I don't need to know what the name of that object is. I don't need to know that there's a tagger. As long as it happens, like I'm happy. So I'm sort of like falling back in love with this approach. So I did a little experiment in a sort of safe part of the code base to put this in to see how it felt and how the team sort of received it. So this object has a tagger that receives self, so it receives the instance of the thing. So in this case, this instance that we found from the database, and delegates to that object to do the tagging. And then there is a thing tagger somewhere. So class thing tagger that has a def initialized like thing, yeah, very smart AI, and then def tag and key value, and then whatever logic needs to go in here. So the nice thing about this approach is that I don't need to learn anything new. It's plain old Ruby, and that has been very refreshing after experiences of using DryRB and interactors and Trailblazer and all those things that require a lot of sort of brain cycles to learn and unlearn when you go to a different company. When you go somewhere and just you can go in and just read plain Ruby, it's like, oh yes, I don't need to go to buy a course for Trailblazer or whatever, or interactors or DryRB. It's like, oh, it's easy, it's plain Ruby. I can make sense of it.
The only thing is, I think I pushed it too far. So I love the way you've just used it there, but I've also just been feeling out what it's like to use it to also like create and get form objects and manage the form objects. And that just seems a step too far, because at that point, I think it's because I'm not really performing an action on the object. Like the object doesn't really exist at that point. And so I create a new instance and then might call, like, say, new form or something.
Yeah.
And it feels wrong. But I think the way what you've done there, that feels right. That actually really feels good to me.
I'm falling in love with this approach again. Just plain Ruby. Let the model sort of have some methods. I think that's cool. And yeah, just learn Ruby, and that should suffice. A question that I have for this approach though is that I don't know if some of you have like dived into the Rails code base. but Rails has this convention where objects have methods, or helpers, for example, do this a lot, where they delegate to a class. And the class, if you go and read it, like this one, it says no doc. I can't remember what the syntax is, but it says like no doc, meaning this is a private class, and that class is not tested in the Rails code base. What's tested is the helper, because that is the public interface. So because Rails doesn't have the concept of a private class, this is the convention in the Rails code base to tell you as a developer reading the code, like this is a private thing. If you mess with it, you're on your own. So you what, sorry?
You can make class private.
Can you?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
But it has
Me-
annoying side effects.
Okay.
Because if a class is private, you obviously need to make sure you're only calling it via the
Uh,
public interface.
yeah.
So that works though in the case that you're talking about. It's great. If you don't want to test that class, it's perfect. If you need to test that class, it's a pain in the ass.
Exactly. And I think that's sort of the question that I still want to answer is I don't want to test this and then also test this. It's like, oh, I'm gonna be testing the same thing, or I'm gonna be testing that this calls this, and that's it. I kind of feel like a pain. It should be a single test. That's a question that I still want to answer. But to the point that I was going with this is that this, I didn't make this up. This is something that I have been learning from, where is it? Casper Team Hansen. This is the second appearance of Casper in this meetup. I have basically become his marketing team because I really like the stuff he does. So this is another one of his inventions. It's called Active Record Associated Object. So I didn't want to learn a new thing, but then I went and learned a new gem. Which is basically exactly what I just showed you with the sort of object or methods in the mix, which I'm finding super interesting, and it's sort of helping me sort of revisit how I design applications. So similar to what I just told you, if you have a post class and the post needs to be published. Oh, sure. Sorry. Let's do this. So if you have a post class and then that post needs to be published, you create a publisher object, and as you can see, same folder structure that we were just following. No services, no interactors, no service objects, business objects, all of that stuff. But then with the sort of conventions of this gem in the class, you say it has object. Because if we go back to this example, how would you call this tagger? Is that a business object? Is that a service object? It is like in the concept from this gem, this tagger is an associated object of the parent class, which is in this case is thing, or in this other case is post. So this post has an associated object called publisher that does its thing. And then in here, the publisher is just the same thing that I showed you. I don't like sort of look too much at this. It's a bit of extra explanation, but it's basically just a class, what you do. What this gem is proposing is that, let me see if I can find the example here. It inherits a bunch of stuff, or it is enhanced with a lot of the callbacks and stuff that Rails brings by default, which can be kind of interesting. Like after create commit, you can tell the publisher to do stuff. But also, let me see if I can find it here because I can remember exactly where that is. Let's look for active job. This gem is when you have a publisher object, I think if I remember correctly, it adds like these methods for you to publish and publish later. So it exposes that automatically. So that same thing that I showed you in this example, where the thing object knows how to tag stuff for deletion and knows how to schedule tagging for later, this thing sort of does it all for you. So it's a mix between the first thing that we talked about here, about using active job as a thing to encapsulate or to sort of call your operations, with sort of the added benefit that you put that not in the job, but somewhere else, and just let the job be a runner of things.
Question I wanted to ask, and this is a good time for it now.
Yeah.
When you showed the active job thing at the start, blew my mind, and that's fantastic. Why are we bothering with the services folder when we can do that? Blew my mind.
It's an option, yeah.
Why would I not do that? What are the drawbacks, and why do we need these other things that's available to us?
I think it depends on, like, my opinion is that it would depend on style, basically. Like, you can, unless someone has opinions.
Some people don't understand the boundary of their transaction. So if you're providing, you perform later, for example, perform now, from now on, I have to put code just to use myself, but it happens in the same transaction. Then you might not have committed the code, which is an obvious side effect financially.
I think there are new gears in Rails to prevent that, but I can't remember. But I think there's something happened recently about transactions in Rails.
The more general version of that comment is you're basically inventing a asynchronous workflow, and you need to be ready for the
Yeah.
symptoms of that.
Yeah.
And most businesses realize very quickly that they can't do synchronous workflows for most of the things they do. That's how they take their business to a greater scale, is to make them asynchronous.
Mhm.
But that's not something
Yeah.
there's a lot to understand and acknowledge.
Yeah.
So would you say that like perform now and perform later are like hugely different scenarios, and an object being expected to arbitrarily be performed now and will perform later and will is a recipe for disaster? Or is that overselling?
I think you've got tailed something important. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah, because making business processes asynchronous brings a whole bunch of important stuff about like eventual correctness and like how do you back them out and
Mhm.
how do you report back on them. Like most business things that happen, operations require at some stage someone to report back and say it succeeded.
Yeah.
It's asynchronous. When does that happen? How do you guarantee someone gets an answer eventually?
Yeah. So like a sharp tool, like a lot of Rails things, like you need to make sure that you are using it the proper way. But the fact is that you can do it, and that's very cool.
If you think about it, that's essentially what I'm doing. It's not in a jobs folder, but you don't have to put something in a jobs folder to be an active job. And most of the time, in 99% of the cases, I'm not writing active job on those, but it's be the same as having a job and just calling new.perform on it.
But it's kind of like at that point, you want to tag it as whether this is like async safe. Is this designed? Have we thought about the consequences of using this in an asynchronous context? And I guess that's the advantage of putting the things that you intend to be asynchronous in the jobs folder and things that you intend to be synchronous in another folder. It's just super clear like what the intention and whether someone thought about the implications of doing it asynchronously.
Definitely. Yeah. Wanna wrap it up, or
You don't mind?
yeah, okay, yeah, cool. So I just want to sort of in that same vein leave you with some reading material. This gem that I showed, the active record associated object, is built with another one of Casper's sort of experiments called active job performs, which I think you'll also find quite interesting because it talks about all of these things. Like it says, like basically the example is you have a post class, and as you said, jobs don't have to be in the jobs folder. They could be even written in line the same class. So this gem explores a little bit of that, like how do you define asynchronous tasks in different places in the app, and why would you do that? So yeah, reading material, very cool stuff coming from Casper. Nice. I think we need to wrap up. So this was a very fun discussion. Thank you very much. If you liked it, let us know so that we can have more of these in the future, plan for different topics and discuss our own experiences just dealing with the hard stuff of our jobs. All right, thank you very much.